Imagine you're buying a vehicle, right? You go through the whole grueling process, you drive it off the lot, and then you realize the binding contract you just signed, it doesn't even match the identification number of the car you were physically sitting in.
Yeah, it's a complete nightmare scenario.
Welcome to Auto News Talk. I mean, we are looking at a retail ecosystem right now that is running so low on inventory and consolidating so rapidly that the immense pressure is causing that final step of the purchasing process, the finance desk, to just completely fracture. The days of a simple handshake deal are, well, they're gone.
They're long gone.
Yeah.
The whole environment is fundamentally rewiring itself.
Yeah.
And, to understand your own exposure as a buyer, we really need to map out the exact mechanisms driving this shift.
Right, because it's not just one thing going wrong.
Exactly. We're tracking a clear domino effect here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to explore how extreme vehicle scarcity at the macro level is basically forcing independent, century-old dealerships to surrender to massive corporate conglomerates.
Wow, yeah.
And then we'll examine how the massive capital debt required for those corporate buyouts trickles directly down to you, the consumer. It creates this high-stakes bottleneck where digital contracts can allegedly be weaponized to extract maximum profit.
So we are looking at the cause and effect of a broken supply chain hitting the consumer's wallet right at the finish line.
That's exactly it.
Let's start with those macro forces then, because the terrain out there for buyers is it's hostile, especially for anyone trying to stick to a strict budget. We are seeing affordable vehicles just pushed to the absolute brink of extinction.
It is a profound structural squeeze. I mean, if you look at the market tracking from Cox Automotive, total used vehicle inventory sits at just 1.95 million units.
Which sounds like a lot of cars on paper.
It sounds like a lot, yeah, but the raw number means very little without understanding the velocity behind it. That 1.95 million actually leaves the entire auto retail sector with a razor-thin 37 days supply of vehicles, which is the leanest level since 2021.
37 days. So wait. If no new cars entered the market, every used car lot in the country would be empty in just over a month.
Completely empty.
Right.
And you have to remember how dealerships operate. They rely on floor plan financing, which is basically borrowing money to keep metal on the asphalt.
Right. They don't own those cars outright.
No, not at all. They're paying interest on them every single day. So they require a steady, predictable flow of product to service that debt. If a lot only has a 37-day buffer, any disruption means they have zero product to sell. And that scarcity is driving the average listing price up to $25,390.
That is just wild for a used car. And 37 days is alarming overall, but that Cox Automotive tracking data reveals a much darker reality for the entry-level buyer, doesn't it?
It really does. It gets worse at the bottom.
Right, because if you need a budget car, say, something under $15,000, that same market pulse shows there's only a 27-day supply. I mean, finding a budget car is like finding a winning lottery ticket on the sidewalk. Why is this specific bracket completely evaporating?
Well, it's a combination of factors, creating a sort of perfect storm of scarcity. The data points to a seasonal spike in demand, fueled by tax refunds and improved credit availability.
Okay, so people have a little cash in hand.
Exactly. They have cash, and they desperately need reliable transportation just to get to work. But the underlying mechanics of the auto industry dictate that vehicles aren't manufactured as budget cars.
Right. Nobody builds a brand new $10,000 car anymore.
Exactly. They have to age into that sub-$15,000 bracket over several years. But because of past supply chain disruptions, those cars were simply never built in the first place.
Oh, wow. So there's a missing generation of cars.
Yes. There is no aging inventory to replenish the lot, which is forcing a crucial and honestly dangerous behavioral shift in the consumer base.
Yeah, the data notes that the market share for certified pre-owned vehicles, CPO vehicles, has dropped to 13.7% of total used sales. That is a huge red flag to me.
It's massive.
Because buyers walking away from CPO warranties just to hit a lower monthly payment means they are taking on massive deferred maintenance risks.
They are absorbing all of the risk.
Right. We are going to see a wave of defaults when these uncertified aging cars inevitably need a $2,000 transmission repair. Buyers are just being forced to trade long-term financial security for immediate mobility.
That is the exact implication of the data. Consumers are staring at the math, realizing they just cannot afford the premium built into a CPO warranty, and they're rolling the dice.
It's terrifying.
It is, because the estimated used retail sales still hit 1.62 million in a single month. People are still buying cars. But they are concentrating their limited buying power on mainstream, historically reliable brands. Your Ford, Chevrolet, Toyota, Honda, Nissan.
Hoping the badge on the grill saves them.
Yeah, those brands currently capture over half of all those sales. Buyers are basically hoping brand reputation will substitute for an actual factory warranty.
But what the market tracking completely leaves out, however, is whether this inventory pipeline will ever actually refill.
Right, it doesn't project that.
Yeah, we have no modeling on whether this structural deficit is just a permanent feature of the new auto market. Like, will the sub $15,000 vehicle ever return in meaningful volume?
That remains the great unanswered variable. We just don't know. But the immediate reality is that operating a retail location in a market with such an aggressive turnover rate, it requires immense capital.
Which is a perfect pivot because sourcing used inventory when trade-ins dry up that requires sophisticated algorithms, right?
Yeah.
National transport logistics, massive digital
So
infrastructure.
you can't just wait for someone to drive up and trade in their sedan anymore.
Which brings us to the second phase of this domino effect. This extreme cost of simply acquiring cars to sell is fundamentally altering the DNA of who actually owns your local dealership.
It is. The independent legacy operators are cashing out.
Yeah, and we have a pristine illustration of this consolidation from a major acquisition announcement. Luther Automotive Group, which is a massive conglomerate, has officially acquired Ike Mazda and Ike Volkswagen in St. Cloud, Minnesota.
Yeah, and the history of that specific company makes this so much more than just a standard real estate transaction.
It really does. The history of the Ike Motor Company is incredible. I mean, the Ike family originated their business in the late 19th century, literally selling wagons and buggies.
Boys and buggies, yeah.
The acquisition announcement actually recognizes them as the seventh oldest dealership in the entire United States. Family-owned since 1898. They survived world wars, they survived the Great Depression, massive industry shifts, and yet this modern inventory crisis is the threshold they will not cross.
It's the one thing that finally pushed them out.
Yeah. They are selling out to Luther, a conglomerate that the deal summary notes operates more than 27 different automotive brands across over 50 locations. It's like a beloved mom-and-pop general store getting swallowed whole by a regional megamart.
It is. And the advisors on this deal, a firm called Performance Brokerage Services, they referred to the closing as a passing of the torch.
Passing of the torch, that sounds so polite.
It does sound polite, but looking at the structural mechanics we just discussed, this is less about passing a torch and more about just surrendering to economies of scale.
Right. You just can't compete.
You can't. A single historic family store simply cannot amortize the multi-million-dollar tech investments required for modern digital retailing and automated inventory acquisition. A 50-location mega group like Luther, they have the capital to deploy that state-of-the-art infrastructure across dozens of rooftops, completely diluting the cost.
But is this scale actually beneficial for the consumer? I mean, this feels like a game of musical chairs, where the music has stopped, but the cost of the chairs has tripled, forcing the smaller players to just sell their seats to the house.
That's a great way to put it.
Because the acquisition announcement claims the names on the building will remain Ike Mazda and Ike VW, it is designed to look totally seamless to the neighborhood.
Business as usual, right?
Exactly. But if the entire back-end financing, the inventory algorithms, the digital retail machinery, if all of that is being swapped out by a multi-state conglomerate, the consumer experience is fundamentally altered. You aren't negotiating with a local family anymore. You are interfacing with a corporate machine.
And you are hitting on a major limitation within the announcement itself, actually, because what remains entirely opaque is the integration timeline.
Right. They don't say when the flip happened.
Exactly. We do not know if or when the mega group's broader digital and financing platforms will actually map onto these legacy stores. The corporate backend dictates the terms of the deal, even if that vintage sign out front remains completely untouched.
And that transition to complex corporate financing platforms leads us directly to the final and honestly most volatile stage of this ecosystem.
The finance.
Yes. When a massive corporate entity takes on heavy capital debt to execute these buyouts in a scarce market, they have to extract maximum profit per vehicle just to service that debt. And that intense pressure lands squarely on the finance manager's desk.
This is where the macro forces literally crash into the micro experience of the consumer.
Right.
The extreme pressure to yield profit on limited inventory culminates at the point of sale. And it's leading to severe friction over digital paperwork, transparency, and basic consent.
It's getting ugly. And to understand the mechanics of this friction, we have to examine a federal lawsuit filed by consumer Louis Huertas against Riverdale Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram.
Yeah, this case is wild.
It really is. According to the legal filing, Huertas alleges he structured a deal to trade in his Jeep Grand Cherokee, and the dealership allegedly utilized a classic lever for a tight market, over allowing on the trade.
Right.
They offered him 20% over market value, promising a loan payoff of $25,169.
Which, on paper, offering well above market value for a trade-in is a highly effective acquisition strategy when auction supplies are totally dry.
You gotta get cars however you can.
Exactly. It secures fresh inventory for the dealer while giving the buyer this false sense of immense equity, which psychologically makes them way more compliant when moving into the finance office.
Yes. But the lawsuit alleges that the reality of the finance office did not match the verbal negotiations at all. Huertas claims the final digitized paperwork was written up for the wrong vehicle entirely.
The wrong VIN.
The wrong VIN. On top of that, the complaint alleges nearly $5,000 in unauthorized fees were just packed into the deal, and that a forged signature was affixed to the binding contract.
Now, it is absolutely critical to state that these are currently unproven allegations pending in federal court.
Right, of course.
The legal report notes that litigation of this nature moves through a dense discovery phase, involving forensic reviews of document exchanges and software logs, before any legal conclusions are drawn.
Yeah, it takes a long time to unpack.
But however it shakes out, the mechanics of the allegations expose massive recurring vulnerabilities built into modern auto retail software.
Wait, but this is where the logic of the industry completely contradicts itself to me. Dealerships push so aggressively for e-signatures and tablet-based contracting, specifically because they create a supposedly seamless digital audit trail.
That was the promise, yeah.
So if an e-signature software requires timestamps and IP tracking, how on earth can a signature allegedly be forged without leaving digital fingerprints everywhere? I mean, are the systems fundamentally flawed, or are they just being weaponized?
Well, the vulnerability lies in the physical interface itself. The digital transition separated the act of reviewing a document from the physical act of signing it.
Oh, I see.
Think about it. When a consumer is handed an iPad or a touchscreen pad, they're often just tapping a highlighted yellow box. They are not reading the itemized, line-by-line breakdown of a complex financial instrument on a 6-inch display.
Right, you're just hitting next, agree.
Exactly. This creates a black box for the consumer. And the legal report outlines that this exact environment fosters recurring industry disputes over massive discrepancies between verbal promises, undiscovered add-on products, and vehicle identification errors.
Signing a contract with the wrong vehicle identification number is catastrophic. It is the equivalent of closing on a mortgage and realizing the deed you signed is for your neighbor's property.
It's a huge mess.
How does that even happen? It completely invalidates the underlying asset securing the loan, and the legal report leaves massive ripple effects entirely unaddressed. We have no idea if Huertas still possesses the disputed vehicle.
We don't.
Furthermore, what happened to the original $25,116 loan payoff? If the paperwork was attached to the wrong VIN, the routing of those funds is completely compromised, meaning the original bank might never have been paid.
The stakes are just incredibly high for all parties involved. For the dealership, utilizing digital systems that fail to maintain clear, consumer-verified disclosures, well, that invites devastating litigation involving consumer protection violations and fraud claims.
It's a huge liability.
And for the buyer, it demonstrates how easily you can bind yourself to tens of thousands of dollars of negative equity, simply because the speed of a digital interface obscures the reality of the math.
If we step back and view this entire landscape, the cause and effect becomes undeniable. We are watching an industry reshape itself under immense pressure.
We are. And synthesizing the evidence across our sources, 3 dominant themes clearly dictate the modern car buying experience right now.
Okay, let's lay them out.
First is the inescapable theme of scarcity. The Cox automotive tracking proves this, with a dangerously low 37-day supply driving buyers out of the CPO market entirely.
The pipeline is bone dry, which is pushing prices to their absolute limit.
Right. Second is the theme of consolidation and scale. Independent survival is becoming mathematically impossible, which is evidenced by the historic Eich family dealership selling their legacy to the Luther conglomerate just to access corporate infrastructure.
The capital required to hunt for rare inventory is simply too high for a single rooftop to manage.
Exactly. And third is the severe breakdown of transparency. The intense need to maximize profit on every transaction pushes the boundaries of trust at the point of sale, which is perfectly illustrated by the severe allegations of unauthorized fees and wrong VINs in the Jeep federal lawsuit.
Wow. When you lay those three themes out, two glaring contradictions immediately emerge. The first is the massive tension between the promise of retail technology and the reality of its implementation.
How so?
Well, we see massive auto groups buying up smaller dealers under the promise of deploying seamless, state-of-the-art digital operations, right? Like the Luther buyout.
Right.
But then you look at the federal lawsuit and you see the immense danger of those exact same digital systems. The e-signatures and tablet interfaces designed to make purchasing more efficient are the exact same tools that allegedly create black boxes for fraud and errors. The technology meant to save the industry is creating its greatest legal exposure.
That is an incisive observation. It really is a double-edged sword. And the second tension lies directly in the consumer's behavior.
Yeah.
We have overwhelming, desperate demand for affordable transportation, which is documented by the incredibly fast turnover of budget vehicles in the market tracking data. Buyers need these vehicles to survive.
They have to get to work.
Right. Yet that desperate need directly collides with the hostile, high-friction environment they face at the dealership, encapsulated by the nightmare scenario alleged by Hortus. The consumer is fighting just to find a vehicle, only to walk into a potential minefield of hidden fees at the finish line.
Which brings us to the ultimate practical takeaway for you, the listener. You are operating in an ecosystem where macro scarcity drives corporate debt, and that debt is paid off at your expense in the finance office.
You really have to be careful.
You are your own last line of defense. When you finally locate a vehicle you can afford, you must break the speed of the digital process. Verify that the VIN on the paperwork matches the physical metal on the lot.
Check the actual dashboard.
Run the math on your trade-in value and your loan payoff line by line. Secure your own copies of the digital audit trail. Entirely decline any unverified add-ons, and refuse to tap a screen until you have seen the itemized contract.
Understanding the structural pressures acting upon the dealership explains why the micro experience feels so aggressive. It is rarely the result of a single rogue employee. It's the output of an industry-wide systemic squeeze. Knowledge of the mechanics is your greatest leverage.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us for this segment of Auto News Talk. We have traced the collapse of the used car pipeline, the buyout of century-old family legacies, and the weaponization of the digital contract.
It is a retail environment demanding absolute vigilance from the consumer.
It really is. The auto industry might be consolidating and digitizing at warp speed, but when you sit down at the finance desk, your pen should always move in slow motion. Pay attention to the massive signs going up in your own city. Will your local independent dealer manage to survive the inventory desert, or are they quietly auditing their software, preparing to pass the torch to a multi-state machine? Keep your eyes on the fine print, and thanks for listening to Auto News Talk.